It's been a long time coming, but the Philips Momentum 329mm Owner V is finally here. It's part of a new generation of 32 inches 4 Kelvin gaming monitors designed specifically for game consoles, while being optimal for both general use and gaming PCs. We expected them to arrive 18 months ago, and now they become available too late. On paper, the 329mm Owner V certainly lives up to the everything for all gamers mandate that many 4 Kelvin gaming monitors are trying to achieve. There's IPS panel technology, HDR support, up to 144 Hz refresh, and excellent connectivity including DisplayPort, HDMI 2.1 and USB-C, the latter also including power supply to keep a laptop running charged. If there's any disappointment, it's about the price. When screens like the 329mm Owner V were first discussed, the price target should have been around $500 divided by £500. Here we are about 18 months later and that number has dropped to just under $900 divided by £900. You still get a lot of display for your money, but at this price point, it's possible to make some rather awkward comparisons between different TVs. Okay, TVs aren't always well optimized for PC use, but given that 120Hz 4 Kelvin OLED TVs can occasionally be had for around $1,000 divided by £1,000, this plain old LCD screen must be something really special, especially for console gamers. Project features. At first glance, the Philips Momentum 329mm Owner V is a fairly conventional PC monitor, albeit a very well-built one. The stand supports height, tilt and swivel adjustment and is very sturdy. The style is simple and sober. That said, the T-shaped base has a great chin. It really takes up desktop space and prevents you from pushing things neatly under the screen. From an ergonomic point of view, a bit of a rethink could be useful. The Philips ambiguous function is also not entirely convincing. It's a user-configurable RGB lighting rig on the rear of the chassis that can be set in a variety of modes, including mirroring the colors displayed on the screen itself and responding to audio playback. It works quite well, although the transition between colors can be a bit abrupt, and it largely achieves what it sets out to do, which is add mood and ambience. Ultimately, though, we prefer the money and engineering effort spent on image quality. At that point, there's at least one obvious area where the Philips Momentum 329mm Owner V could have used a little extra investment. However, the 32 inches IPS panel itself looks good in terms of numbers. It's the real 4 Kelvin deal, rated at 1 ms for response and good for 111% coverage of the Adobe RGB gamut. It's also capable of 144 Hz refresh via both the single DisplayPort interface and the 3 HDMI 2.1 inputs. Then it's ready to dance with both a gaming PC and a great PS5 monitor or Xbox Series X monitor option. It's really perfect if you want to share a screen with both a PC and a console. There is also a USB-C interface with 65W power delivery for one-cable laptop enjoyment, and a USB hub, which effectively turns the USB-C interface into a stylish one-cable hub. Very nice. So where is that missing investment? While the 329mm Owner V has HDR support, it's only the simplest display DR400 variant, so there is no local dimming. Okay, the backlight is rated at a hefty 500 nits punch, but without a proper full-array backlight, this isn't a true HDR panel. Performance. What it is, though, is a very nice SDR monitor. The Philips Momentum pulls off the tough trick of being extremely punchy and vibrant, as well as expertly calibrated. The default colors in sRGB mode are just about perfect. The white tones are super clean and everything looks super crisp and clean with that 4 Kelvin pixel grid. Of course, it's not an OLED panel, so there are limitations. A hint of light bleed is visible around the edges of the panel, while a hint of the usual IPS glow is visible when changing viewing positions. Viewing angles and contrast are good for IPS screens, but they're not even close to that of an OLED panel with its per pixel light control. How much matters in the game? Well, it depends on the game and the scene in question. Dayscapes in something like Witcher 3 definitely stand out. As for interior city scenes, such as Cyberpunk 2077 for example, the results still look good, but there's inevitably not the depth and in high darkness of the picture that you get with an OLED panel, nor is there absolute speed. When it comes to IPS screens, the 329mm Owner V is super nimble. Philips has enabled 3 levels of pixel accelerating overdrive. The fastest setting has a fairly obvious overshoot and is best avoided, but the middle option is a great compromise and about as good as it gets from IPS technology right now. There is very little visible blur. Thanks to the 144 Hz refresh, there is almost no lag. Of course, there are monitors with higher refresh rates of 480 Hz or more, but for most gamers, efficiency above 120 Hz or 144 Hz tends to drop off quickly, and of course the consoles only support 120 Hz anyway. Probably the 329mm Owner V's its weakest aspect is, predictably, its HDR
So which one of
performance.
these
This is not a
three
true
monitors
HDR
is your
screen and does not
favourite?
offer a
If you
true
could just
HDR
pick one to
experience.
get.
It will
Let's
display
take a look at
HDR
these three
colors
monitors
correctly,
which have
but the
been
question
announced,
is
let you
whether
know when they
HDR
should be
capable
available
games
and
really
how
look
much they
better in
might
HDR
cost you.
mode.
So
What we can
first
say
off,
for
we've got
sure,
the Philips
however, is that
Momentum
SDR content is less punchy and
559M1
vibrant with the monitor in HDR mode.
55
Unfortunately,
inch.
this means you'll need to toggle
55
HDR
inch to
on
me,
and
that's
off
a
depending
TV.
on what you're watching
And
or
let's
playing
get
to
some
get
of
the
the
best
highlights here. The
SDR and
Philips
HDR
Momentum
experience,
supports 4K
respectively.
resolution
For the
at
record, the
120
329M
Hz.
Owner V has an
That means you
HDR
should
mode
be able to
optimized
pump out
specifically for
120
Microsoft Xbox
FPS
Series consoles,
4K
but it's
resolution
ridiculously
once we have
saturated
games
and,
which
quite
support
frankly,
that.
looks
This is
silly.
powered by
Sticking to
AMD
the default
FreeSync
HDR
Premium
mode is
Pro
our advice.
technology to
In
reduce
general,
screen
should you buy
tearing.
it? As an
Also
all-around
introduced a
solution
new
for general
dedicated
computing and
Xbox
PC
picture
gaming,
mode.
as well as
Players
screen
can enjoy
sharing with
high
the console,
contrast
the Philips
HDR
Momentum
with VISA
329M Owner V can be
HDR
beaten.
1000,
In terms of traditional
and it's
LCD
also
monitors,
got
the image
local
quality of the
dimming,
32
which
inches
is really
4
cool.
Kelvin
So
nits
this is
panel
going to
is
be an
excellent.
amazing
Colors pop,
display. I've got a
pixels are
Philips
fast,
TV,
and the refresh
and
rate is
I
high
can vouch
enough.
for them. I
It's
just
also well
wish
optimized
that
for
this
sharing
had
with
the
a console
ambient
thanks to HDMI
lighting system
2.1
around it, which would
connectivity,
just add
and therefore
another
4 Kelvin
level
at
of immersion,
120
but maybe
Hz
that
support.
has to come
Throw in
in
good
the
build
future,
quality
as
and a few
they
extras
are
to sweeten the
apparently
deal,
working on
including
more
powered
models
USB-C
with
lighting
Philips.
and
So how
funky
much will this
RGB
cost you?
lighting,
This
and
will
you've got a
cost you
solid overall package. While the lack of true HDR capability is a little
and the release
disappointing,
date
our
is
main
summer
caveat concerns the price.
2021.
Compared to a
So we don't have an
120
exact
Hz
date,
OLED TV
but
like
it
the
should
excellent
be
LG
coming
C1 or
very
this year's
soon.
LG
Next up,
C2,
we've
the
got
Philips
Asus
Momentum
Strix
329M
Xbox
Owner
Edition
V looks
gaming
like a
monitor.
mid-range value.
Again,
For
43
PC
inches.
gamers,
This is
it
more like
probably
TV
won't matter.
size
OLED
compared to
TVs are
monitor, if
usually
you ask
42
me, but
inches or
still,
larger, making them
this
somewhat
looks
suboptimal
awesome,
for general
and
desktop
this
use.
will
But if your
deliver
main priority
4K
is console
Ultra
gaming,
HD visuals
the value
with a
proposition of
1
this mostly excellent
millisecond
Philips
response
monitor is
time, so that will be
debatable.
amazing
For a little
for all
more
you
money, you could get a
FPS
bigger
gamers out there.
OLED panel with
And
much
it's been
better
co-developed
HDR
with the team
performance
at
and better response for
Xbox,
just a little more
and
money.
Asus
Here's
has
how we tested the
created
Philips
an Xbox
Momentum
mode for best color
329M Owner
contrast
V.
and hue
Gaming
settings
monitor
when
tests
paired
are
with
as much
Xbox
about
Series
subjective
X or S.
experience as
The
they are
monitor
about
also
cold,
features
hard
AMD
numbers. We are
FreeSync
certainly
Premium Pro
interested in
technology,
statistics,
just like the
everything
Philips
from color coverage
TV
and
did,
contrast to
putting
pixel
an end
response,
to choppy
latency, and
gameplay
HDR support
replacing it with
matters.
super
OSD capabilities and
smooth native
configurability of
4K
refresh
at
rates and overdrive are also
120 Hz
important, but
via
also real
HDMI
experiences.
2.1,
How
so
do all
this
those
is
numbers
the new
translate when
HDMI
you actually start
2.1
playing?
monitors and TVs
Finally, we
starting to
also
appear, which is
evaluate
awesome.
broader compatibility
And
and
yeah,
suitability
it's got
for
the same
both
display,
PC and
HDR
consoles,
1000
including connectivity
certification
and
as well.
ergonomics. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and support my channel.